Hi everyone, my name's Emma. Welcome back to the Champions of Wonder podcast. Today we are talking about intellectual property and the new space of NFTs and what that really means for artists. When it comes to choices and decisions, the ones that we make with more intention will help us create the world that we want to live in by understanding consequences as much as we can of the decisions that we decide to make every day. The world around us is full of lessons, full of opportunity to learn and to grow and to redirect our course to be in line with our most authentic selves. And authenticity often breeds creation, and many of us will come up with wonderful ideas, amazing ideas. Some will take us many places, and some we just create for ourselves to enjoy and those around us. But what happens when we have a creation and we want to share it with the world, but we don't have the exact tools, the exact ability to promote ourselves? Well, we're going to talk about this lesson of what we can do with our intellectual property to protect our rights over our own creations through what Taylor Swift has gone through. Many of us know about Taylor Swift and have heard her music throughout the years and have seen her adapt into a household name. But when she first started out, she was 14 and she signed on to Big Machine Records. And in the contract that she signed, the masters of her albums would be owned by Big Machine Records. She would get a cut of the profits, but she would never be the sole owner of her own music. Now, since then, Taylor Swift, over the past 15 years, has grown into a multimillionaire and has created her own record company and is currently producing all of her own albums. And she had to fight to get her originals. And that is the debacle that happened between Big Machine Records and Scooter Braun. And Taylor Swift eventually has gotten certain rights back, and she is re-recording the first 5 original albums because she has the official rights over her own property now. And you might be thinking, wow, how does somebody not own their own property? Or, hey, I'm not going to be at the level of Taylor Swift and be able to afford to spend millions of dollars to get those original to get the original back and to not just have access to the copies. And that is where it comes into play. We need to be aware of what rights we do have as owners of property, and when do we actually even own the stuff that we create. If we work at a college or we are at a job, oftentimes anything we do create that progresses the company is not necessarily our own property. It is the property of the company, and you did it under contract with them, and they have full rights to it. Varies company to company, college to college, but we do need to be aware if we want to patent something, if we want to come up with an original idea, if we want to come up with something that changes the industry in whatever capacity, big or small, we need to be aware of what rights we have over certain property that we create, if it can even be considered our property, if we're creating it and using the resources of somebody else. So that's a bit of a way that we could get around it, is really understanding the contract that we are signing with our jobs and with our colleges and with whoever it is that we're working, even if it's freelance. And there's often contracts, and contract law is not as complicated, but if you don't have the depth or a brief understanding, you can be confused by just the way these contracts are formed. And a lot of the times, places like Big Machine Records and companies do have many lawyers that they hire to specifically create contracts so that the person who is signing them, the person who the contract is created in favor of, usually gets the most benefits. If we are not aware of how this contract will affect us currently and in the future, we oftentimes get left with this feeling of I don't really know what's going on. And the best negotiation is when neither party leaves happy. That is when a negotiation has been successfully completed. But most of the time, it is usually the one who has more power, more understanding, that gets the better deal. And of course, Taylor Swift was very young. Most of the time, people who are up-and-coming artists aren't really fully aware of their full value that they can provide because they haven't seen it yet come to fruition. Oftentimes, these recording companies and record companies do know the value that is possible, and they have marketing strategies that really bring artists to life. And it is a balance. Most of the time, if you're an artist, you do need somebody to help you out. Now, there is where the space of NFTs is really coming in when it comes to art. And currently, artists sell their paintings, and then that original is no longer theirs. And whoever owns the original is the one who has the most value. Most of the time, artists cannot project exactly how important their art can be, so they often sell it for values that are worth a lot less than they someday will be. But because they sold that painting, somebody else is going to make money when they resell it because they have the original. Now, NFTs are really keeping the rights of the property with the person who created them. And then whoever owns the rights of the NFT, which is a non-fungible token, so it could be a piece of art. And I do see that this NFT space will expand to include movies and books and almost any other kind of artwork, music that can be created and have that kind of intellectual property. And the person who creates it will be the owner of that property. They will be the owner of that book, and they won't have to go through a secondary source like a publishing company. They won't have to go through a recording company because they will be able to provide the resources and the actual creation of that piece of property, whether it be writing or a book or music or a movie, videos. All of that will be under this space where people are allowed to own the original, and then people are sold copies of it. And whoever owns the original is the one who has the most money, who has the greatest value of that piece. And in the future, it will be the person who created that piece of artwork. It will be up to them to decide if they want to sell the rights or not, or if they want to hold on to it and sell copies and make money that way. But they won't have to go through a publishing house. They won't have to go through a recording company. They won't have to go through a distributor like Netflix for movies. It will completely disrupt the chain that is currently occurring around the creation process, where there used to be 15, 20 different parties involved, where the money would have to be separated. NFTs will create a space that the person who creates that artwork, that piece of art, will be the one who gets to decide how it is distributed and who gets access to it. And it will completely shift from the publishers, the recording companies having the sole power, to switching back to the artist who is the original creator. And that will be an amazing space to see grow, and it is going to disrupt places like Netflix and publishing and recording companies and where movies are currently created. This may seem like it's so far off in the future, but if we remember, Blockbuster also thought that Netflix was never going to need a space to grow into. And just as everything rises, everything does fall, and something else takes its place, and NFTs will be that place that takes over and will continue to disrupt the chain, just like how Uber disrupted taxis, Airbnb disrupted hotels, and how Bitcoin is disrupting the use of standard banks. And that is the continuation that NFT will continue to do, where it is going to put the power back into the person's hands who created that artwork. Now, what do we do if our intellectual property has been stolen? How do we grieve that? How do we let it go? And how do we understand that we can continue and that we shouldn't be discouraged to never create again? If you were younger and you didn't really understand the different laws that come with being a person working at a college or at a job and how those ideas aren't necessarily yours, and if people do steal your ideas, if people do try to take what you have created, I want you to understand that although they may have taken an idea, they could not take the thought process from you that created that idea. And Big Machine Records could have taken her first 5 albums, and they would never be able to take the thought process that created any of them. And that is something that may seem almost unworthy of talking about, almost like, well, yeah, they can't steal my thoughts, but they stole my idea. And that may be true, and it is hard to see something that you work so hard on be taken from you, but understand that they can't take your idea processing system. They can't take away how you created that idea, and they probably cannot project what you wanted that idea to continue to grow into. If you come up with an idea and you're really enjoying it and you're really into it, you probably had many different paths that you wanted that idea to come to life in. And it could have gone in many different directions. It had this whole web that it was connected to, that it could grow into. But they could not take that from you. They could only take a snapshot of what you were able to think in that moment in time. But understand that if you keep growing and if you keep continuing, if you grieve that loss and understand that there is more to come, that if you were 15 and someone stole your idea, your best idea, your greatest invention will not have happened when you were 15, and then for the rest of your life you're going to not be able to achieve as amazing things. But if you understand that it was difficult and to learn from those mistakes, if there was this really amazing idea, how do you develop it on your own? How can you turn it into something that works for you, that you can share on your own terms? What are the different ways to do that? Different streaming platforms, different social media apps exist where you can share whatever you create in the space and in the way that you want to create and to share. So there is many opportunities to share and to reach people who genuinely are interested and who want to help you. So that might be a little bit that you can take with you next time something like that happens. If it has happened, what can you learn from it? What can you do to protect yourself against that happening? What can you learn about contract law? What can you learn about what happened to other people who have had their property stolen? And it happens to artists and creators all the time because people are not completely aware of the value that they provide. And that is also another really big thing that we need to understand, is that if we have had ideas stolen from us, all of them were able to see a value that you were not able to see. And that doesn't mean that you don't think that you're valuable. It means that they were so understanding that this could be something huge that they wanted to take it from you before you were completely confident and you doubled down on it. And you said, you know what, this is a great idea. This is something that I want to pursue and I am passionate about. And we need to start feeling that way and generating that validation within ourselves. We need to understand, you know what, I love this idea. It can help people. It is a different way to view the world. It is a different way to explain what is going on in the world. This is important. And if we understand the value of what we create, we won't be so willing to hand it over to just anyone. If you truly understand the value in what you have to offer and what you have to say, you won't freely hand it to just anybody who's willing to listen. Of course, if you're in school and you have to create a project, you probably will pour into it a lot of hours and a lot of time and a lot of care. And that's okay. And you don't have to give up on that idea completely either. There's something from that idea that you can continue to expand on and grow that nobody ever knew about because you probably didn't believe in that part of it enough to even talk about it. But maybe and probably that part that you didn't even bother talking about was the missing key to project them into an even bigger fortune from your idea. So if there's a part of your idea that you didn't completely share, hold on to it, expand it, keep growing with it. And if there was this absolute love for what you were doing, keep going with it. Keep growing the idea, and keep moving forward and understanding that you are valuable and important and valid, and only from yourself can that validation ever mean anything. And if it has happened, learn the lessons, and then move forward, and then realize the value that you have to offer. And then do not be so free with handing your ideas out to people. Oftentimes when we tell people, this is what's happening, like this is my idea, they feel like they can just give us all of these recommendations and all of these insights that we didn't ask for. But if we offer up information, oftentimes people understand that as, well, I get to talk about it, I get to access something, or I get to tell her exactly how I feel about it. We need to tell people what they need to know, and oftentimes when it comes to those ideas, most people don't need to know because they can make you feel insecure, or they can take it, and neither of those are a good direction to move forward in. Of course, a lot of people will be encouraging and want you to do the best, but if we are doing something to create value in the world, that is what we are doing. If we're doing something, if we're posting something to get the likes and to not get hate comments, there's too much expectation on that as well. Not everything that we come up with is going to completely change the world, but to every single person, their life is their whole world. And if we can change for a second somebody into being in a better mood, into laughing, into smiling, into just being able to step out of whatever they're constantly thinking about, to just be present in that moment with your piece of writing or your piece of art or your video, that is really the goal of all of this. And Taylor Swift's music has brought that to many people, a lot of joy and a lot of solace when there was a hard time in their lives. And as an artist, she was able to bring that joy into the world, and we can continue to do that as well, whether we're artists or authors or writers or whatever other way that we can create passion and a change in the world. And us being our most authentic selves is the greatest change that we can bring to this world. And that is what we can do every single time we create an idea. We can understand that this is an authentic part of me being shared with the world, and that authentic part is worth a great deal. So the next time you are presented with an idea that you were able to create, be careful what you do with it. Understand what it means to share with the world your art, and to share it in a way that is most beneficial, not only to you, but to the art and to the person who is going to get access to it. There's a lot of moving parts, but we have to understand that being authentic is something that is worth pursuing, and that if somebody takes something from you, we need to understand that they did not devalue us. That piece of art is still valuable, it is still adding value to people's life, and that we can continue to move forward and to learn and to grow and to create more, to just keep creating the most authentic version of ourselves in every regard that we possibly can. It's the most important thing that we can do here, now, and every day after. It's a story that has been told for many, many years about our ideas are so important and so valuable, and they're often treated as if they're not, or we feel like they're not. And we all have value in what we have to say that can provide value. And we need to remember that. And we can learn lessons all around us. And if we continue to have wonder about the world, if we continue to move forward with that wonder like a child, we can move forward and we can create and we can continue to be that authentic version of ourselves. Taylor Swift will continue to be that. NFTs will continue to provide a space that disrupts the entire world as we know it, and the value of intellectual property is going to completely shift. And we are going to be integrated into the story in an amazing and wonderful way as we continue to move forward. Next week, we're going to be talking about transmedia storytelling and how that really incorporates into everything that we've been talking about so far, and how moving forward, that is going to be the tool that everything is going to be based off even more than it already is. And if you don't know what that phrase means, transmedia storytelling, I promise that you already interact with it on a daily basis and throughout your year. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit more next time. But until then, move through the world with a childlike wonder and continue to be a champion of wonder in that way. Until then, tune in, but also have an amazing day.